According to official statistics, California is the poorest state in the nation. Correct. Did you know that California has the highest percentage of homeless persons in the entire country? Here in this chart you will see how many homeless people there are per state in the United States. Well, California takes the prize with over 160,000 people living on the streets. There is no other state in the entire country that comes close to this number. The second state with the most people living on the street is New York with 91,000 people, almost half of what California has. Let me now share another story with you. Did you know that 1 in 3 people live in poverty in California? That's accurate. According to a report from the Californian government, 34% of all Californians were considered to be poor in 2019, which was before the pandemic. However, things grew worse in California following the outbreak. Yes, thousands of businesses and residents made the decision to leave California during the pandemic, taking with them jobs, cash, and taxes that would have been paid. Californians are also poorer than ever due to unprecedented inflation and increasing expenses. As a result, it is predicted that the previously mentioned 34% poverty rate would continue to rise. The state of California, one of the richest in the world and the origin of the American dream, is the topic at hand, so take caution. The state of California contains some of the most abundant natural resources in the entire nation. It also has some of the most technologically advanced industries, and it is where businesses like Google, Facebook, and many more were started. The real question now is why poverty is so prevalent in California. In this video, we'll examine the oddity that is California, the country's richest state but also its poorest. California became associated with prosperity in the 1800s, during the American Gold Rush. The economy of California is also very big and complicated. Just behind Germany and larger than the United Kingdom, California would have the 5th largest GDP in the world if it were an independent nation. California is a state that produces a lot of staple foods, vegetables, and fruits, but it is also incredibly rich in minerals, oil, and other natural resources like timber. California was the promised land in the United States following World War II. Because of its low taxes, ease of starting a business, infrastructure, and natural resources, California started to attract large numbers of immigrants from other states. All businessmen and entrepreneurs started traveling here. Universities were established, massive highways were constructed, and the concept of suburbia emerged. California experienced an economic boom during the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s as a result of all these advancements. Californians were taking advantage of an unprecedented boom in the development of capitalism. The most significant businesses in the world, including Apple, Visa, Disney, Google, Facebook, McDonald's, Tesla, and even the Hollywood sector, were formed in this region. California became the place where the American dream was first realized as a result of its rapid growth and wealth. The American dream is the conviction that, with enough effort, anyone can achieve their financial goals of owning a home, a car, and a family in the United States. For working people in California, this dream was a reality from the 1950s to the 1970s. However, a significant change that occurred as California's culture advanced delayed that abundance and development. The fact that the United States is a federal nation is one of its greatest virtues. This indicates that the states that make up the Union have sufficient autonomy to make decisions regarding things like taxes, rules, and other internal laws. And as you may already be aware, the Democrats and the Republicans are the two parties that control the direction that the United States takes. More left-wing views are held by the Democratic Party, who think that the government should play a significant role in the economy and control it for the benefit of everybody. They think that greater taxes are necessary to support the poorest people, fund universal healthcare, and give other social benefits. The Republican Party, which is more right-wing, is on the other side. They think taxes should be modest and that the government shouldn't interfere with the economy. They think that many social interests, such as those relating to health and education, should be kept private. Because traditionally, California has been a heavily Republican state. The Republican Party dominated state and presidential elections following World War II. However, as the years went by, the Democratic Party started to grow in strength. California didn't become a democratic state until the late 1980s and the post-Reagan era. And as the Democratic Party gradually gained control, everything in California altered. California has changed from being a business haven to being a business turnoff. Businesses gradually migrated out of California as regulations there became some of the tightest in the nation, taxes there some of the highest, and both. When the pandemic struck the US, this came to a head. Firms moved to states with less restrictions and cheaper taxes, like Texas, Florida, Arizona, and Nevada, after realizing it was no longer advantageous to have their firms domiciled in California. If you are enjoying this video and want to be aware of new videos, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. These states provided numerous advantages to both enterprises and employees. If you reside in California, you already know how much more costly everything is there, from housing to food to petrol. And the high taxes and regulations in California are to blame for everything being more expensive there. As a result of leaving California, both firms and workers enjoyed an exponential rise in their level of living. Did you know that California's minimum wage is $15 per hour? The $7.25 federal minimum wage in the United States is more than doubled by this amount. Additionally, California's average wage is close to $80,000, compared to the United States' average wage of less than $70,000. Did you realize that 34% of Californians live in poverty or close to it, despite having such a high salary, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video? And when we talk about poverty, it refers to the situation in which a person does not make enough money to cover all of their fundamental needs, including food, a roof over their heads, access to transportation, and other costs. In California, 1 in 3 people live in this reality. Even if you work hard and have a nice job, it's likely that you don't own anything. That's right, it's hard to buy a property in California due to the exorbitant costs. To give you an idea, the typical home in San Francisco is worth $1.5 million, whereas the typical property in Los Angeles is only worth $1 million. You and your spouse would need to make at least $200,000 a year in income to qualify for a mortgage of these amounts. But returning to the topic of poverty, there is also the so-called extreme form, which is characterized by having less than 50% of the income required to pay for necessities. 1 in 6 Californians live in extreme poverty, according to statistics. In this chart you will see how California compares to other states in terms of extreme poverty. As you will see, states like Florida, New York, and Texas have much lower poverty levels than California. And if you reside in California, you are aware that this is absolutely accurate. California is experiencing a youth homelessness pandemic. This circumstance has gotten out of hand in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Nearly everywhere in the year-round residential areas of downtown and on the beaches are tents. Californians have a problem with these tiny slums. Here, you can witness violent confrontations, heavy drug usage, and the worst human catastrophes. The saddest part of all of this is that more than 160,000 people in California are in this circumstance. But take note, in this illustration, we're talking about folks who live on the streets. Because they are unable to pay California's expensive rents, a lot of people live in their cars. Many teachers and even bus drivers have been reported to live in their automobiles due to the exorbitant rentals in California. Sadly, their only option is to live on the streets. However, did you know that California really pays you to live without a home? More than any other state, California is the one that spends the most money on its citizens. Here in this chart you'll see how much each state spends on welfare benefits. California is by far the state that spends the most on its population, with more than $103 billion a year on benefits to the poorest alone. That's 3 times more than Texas, 4 times more than Florida, and nearly twice as much as New York. And yet, despite all of this, homelessness is still on the rise in California, in part because the state does not provide incentives for its residents to work hard and advance their lives. To put it another way, if you're a homeless person living on the streets, the state will give you money, checks to purchase food, free medical care, and even clothes, but it won't encourage you to work and lead a better life. Who do you believe covers all of these state costs? Well, those are the California-based employees. Unfortunately, California has grown to be the birthplace of socialism in the country, as well as the home of extreme poverty. California was once the birthplace of the biggest corporations on earth and the American ideal, but it has since turned into a nightmare, and thousands of people and businesses are fleeing. What about you? Are you a California citizen? How does the state's poverty affect you? Leave us your opinion in the comments.